Tony, thank you very much for those warm words. It's always great to be in Danville, Virginia, the heart of Southside, and it is a pleasure to be with you today on this very special occasion, in my opinion. I want to echo what Tony Lundy said about our law enforcement. Our law enforcement preserves and protects us, and we need to show them appreciation whenever we can. Thank you, Danville finest and all law enforcement here today. I also want to salute all the veterans of all wars and the descendants of those veterans that are gathered here today. Thank you for making the time to come out on this Sunday afternoon. And I want to say thanks to Tony Lundy and the Jefferson Davis chapter, the Sons of Confederate Veterans, and to Frank Harvey and those with the Pennsylvania Vindicators for all your efforts in getting so many people here on this day. And thank you for your organizational work. Colonel Greg Eanes is here. Greg is an outstanding historian, and if you have not read his books about Confederate history and history in general, I urge you to do so. Extremely knowledgeable, and we are grateful for his being here. And thanks to all of you again for coming out, being here today, and hopefully sending a message across Danville and Southside to all Virginians and to those even in Washington, D.C. We are here today to salute the bravery and courage of all veterans, including those honored by the memorial here in front of this, the last capital of Confederacy, and now the home of the Danville Museum of Art and History. The Civil War, or more accurately, the Brothers' War, saw on both sides of that great conflict instances replete with valor, giving one's life for your fellow buddies and fellow fighters. In the beginning, the North was fighting to stop secession, and the South was fighting for the right to secede and be independent. Noted African-American historian and scholar recently wrote in his column about the fight over secession and pointed out that Virginia, New York, Rhode Island would not have joined in the Constitution of 1788 without the right to regain their sovereignty if they so choose. Williams provided elucidating insight as to the initial cause of the conflict, and over the last 150 years, voluminous volumes, debates as to the various causes of the Civil War have taken up millions of pages of history. But now the politically correct crowd is saying only one view matters, and it is our view. They say if you do not agree with our view on causes, symbols, and flags, you're racist, bigots, and full of intolerant phobia. I say no. We are here in Danville on this August 2nd, 2015, trying to preserve for our ancestors who served so bravely and for so many who died so young, a tiny plot of ground with a flagpole and a flag as a remembrance of their service and sacrifice. But the PC crowd says not here, not anywhere outside on the grounds. And now they say move the memorial inside. But to those who want to appease and coddle, do not be fooled. You can move the whole memorial inside. It will still be on city property, and the PCers will still not be satisfied. 25 years ago, there was a flagpole right out front here. And on that flagpole, the flag of the Confederacy flew. Then it came down. And then there was agreement in 1994 with the city council then that was provided and written as a contractual arrangement to have the flag, the emblems, and the memorial just as it is today. And don't think the politically correct expressed will just be happy obliterating the Danville Memorial. The PCers won't be happy until they moved it inside, then in the closet, then in the basement, and finally to the Danville landfill. We need to stand up and say no. And I want to recognize Fred Shanks, member of Danville City Council. Fred, thank you for being here, and thank you for having the courage to state your conviction. They're already talking about in Richmond what they're going to do to change the name of the Jeff Davis Highway and who they're going to get to sponsor the bill. They're already talking about changing parts of Route 58 that are named the Jeb Stuart Highway, parts of Route 92 named the Jeb Stuart Highway, parts of Route 360 named the Jeb Stuart Highway. They want to take those signs down. And in Connecticut, the PC crowd has already kicked out Jefferson and Jackson. They don't have a Jefferson-Jackson Day anymore. They've got some other name, and I don't even know what it is. And Andrew Jackson was the last president that we had that had no indebtedness. And Thomas Jefferson doubled the size of this country, which without the Thomas Jefferson Louisiana Purchase, we would not be a great nation. And in Richmond, don't think the PC crowd is finished there. In 1858, they erected a monument to George Washington. At the base of that monument is a statue of Thomas Jefferson. On the other side, at the base, is a statue of one of the leading ancestors of Robert E. Lee. They say they've got to go because their view of what was right in those times is wrong today. And I fully agree in equality and fairness for all. But let me tell you, some of those on the PC side don't want to examine history too closely. In 1858, Abraham Lincoln, when he was debating against Stephen A. Douglas for a seat in the United States Senate, made very racist and disparaging and belittling remarks about African Americans. And in the 1600s and the 1700s, there were a lot and many of African ancestry that were rounding up people in that continent and bringing them and selling them and enslaving them. So if you want to look at the correct view of history and go back and evaluate all things from the perspective of today, not only do you want to get rid of Robert E. Lee, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, you're going to have to start chiseling on the Lincoln Memorial and re-examine your records of African heritage. In 1865, at Appomattox, the war was ended. In 1965, Bruce Catton, perhaps the most noted Civil War author and historian, came to Appomattox for the centennial celebration. And he pointed out how Robert E. Lee and U.S. Grant paved the way for the aftermath, for a country to be united, not divided. Lee was asked, should we go into the hills of Virginia, the hills of North Carolina and Georgia, and keep fighting. And he said, no, let's make peace. And U.S. Grant said, you can keep many of your weapons. Take your horse with you. And he offered reasonable terms, and they agreed. And when the Confederates rode away from the McLean House, the Union soldiers and officers stood at attention, giving honor and dignity to the former opponents of theirs. And what we need today is honor and dignity. U.S. Grant gives more honor and dignity than many today want to give to those who served between 1861 and 1865. U.S. Grant didn't say burn the flags, burn the uniform, and end all Confederate God. They saluted because they knew that it had been a horrendous war. 600,000 people, soldiers and men and women of valor, died in that fight. They believed that we should honor and respect those that have served, and we should honor and respect the 1994 agreement here in Danville in recognition of that. Our leaders at the local level, at the state level, and the national level must not follow or emulate the model of the two-time governor of Maryland after he said, black lives matter, white lives matter, all lives matter. When the heat got turned up by one of the leaders of that group, he changed his tune and caved into political correctness. What we need are leaders across this nation willing to stand against political correctness and do the right thing, because all lives matter, black, white, and every color. Before I close, I do want to commend Kathleen Hines on an outstanding rendition of Carry Me Back to Old Virginia. If James Bland were alive today in Danville, Virginia, I'm sure he would have stood and applauded. I know that you, like me, believe that the veterans of all of our wars, including those who fought as sons of the South in 1861 to 1865, deserve their memorials and recognition. The Danville Resolves, which I hope we will overwhelmingly applaud and shout for today, have been distributed. And let us having a rousing shout in support of those resolves, and to borrow a phrase from days gone by, let us tell our political leaders they must not crucify the veterans and their memories and their ancestors upon the cross of committed political correctness. Let's stand up for Danville, Virginia, and the United States of America. Yeah.
Fred Shanks, I want everybody to know, under tremendous pressure, under fire, completely surrounded, this man right here took a picket's charge toward the other side. This man right here was courageous. When I talk about great Virginians, we have a great Virginian on our city council who spoke up for us the other night.
Yes.
And he was very, very, very eloquent about it. Fred, thank you, sir. We are proud to have you here. Before Fred starts, we'll get Kenny to come up here. Kenny's with the band Mudflap. If you haven't heard Mudflap play, they'll be back in Danville a couple of weeks playing down at Highlanders. Come out and listen to them and support our local band. They provided our sound system today.
We'll also be playing for the Wounded Warrior benefit here in Virginia in Lynchburg, September 12th next month. Y'all come on out.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Tony, for that rousing introduction. I appreciate it. And thank you, Tony, for all that you do for our region and for those of us that respect and appreciate our heritage and those fine characteristics that make us Southern ladies and Southern gentlemen. Nobody told me I was to follow the great Virgil Goode, so my apologies, I didn't draw that, but that's the way it ended up. Before I get started, I just want to make sure, if there are any other members of City Council, please let me know. I'd like to acknowledge you.
You ain't gonna find them. Where are they?
To all of you here for this celebration of the American soldier and Southern heritage, welcome to Danville, Virginia.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Sutherland Mansion here in Danville, and welcome to the last capital of the Confederacy.
Yeah.
Briefly, the Sutherland Mansion was built in 1859 for William T. Sutherland, who was a successful manufacturer and dealer in tobacco. Sutherland was mayor from 1855 to 1861 and was delegate to the Virginia Convention of the Ordinance of Secession from the United States. Sutherland then served as the Confederate States Army as a commandant here in Danville, and also later served as the chief quartermaster for Danville with the rank of major. Folks, I was raised by my parents to aspire to be a true Southern gentleman, to respect and love those around us, to hold the doors open for the ladies, to worship our Lord, and to live and let live.
Yeah.
When I pass, I will not know if I succeeded in becoming that Southern gentleman. My hope, though, is when I do pass, someone will say, we celebrate the life of Fred Shanks, a true Southern gentleman.
Yeah.
I, like most of you, probably every one of you, grew up proud to be a Southern. A vast number of us associate the Confederate flag with Southern pride and heritage. That is a God-given right.
Yes.
There's a small minority of people in the North and in the South who serve or still serve in hate groups that use both the United States flag and the Confederate flag. This hijacking of the flag by a small minority and the subsequent belief by some that that symbol of the South is forever tainted by these hate groups is wrong. As you know, just last month, or actually it's been a little over a month, a 21-year-old mentally disturbed white bigot went into a beautiful historical church in Charleston, South Carolina, sat down for over an hour with members of that church, and then got up and ruthlessly killed 9 members of that church. The media, that was a horrible event, we can all agree.
Amen.
Horrible. But the media and politicians have hijacked this event and attacked our Southern symbols. Danville was no exception to this hijacking. This week, Danville City Council will consider an ordinance that, if passed, will effectively take down this flag. The persons associated with this action are not creating new rights for anyone. They are taking away rights that have existed for years. In closing, I would like to say there are a few places more deserving to fly the Confederate flag than these grounds, the last capital of Confederacy.
That's right. Yeah.
If the city cannot stand by its commitments that it made in 1914, 1916, and 1994 to hold this property, to acquire and preserve documents, books, pictures, paintings, and other things relating to the history of the Confederate States, and to conduct and maintain a museum of mementos and relics of the war between the states, then the city should establish a fair market value on this property and solicit bids from private museums that will live by those commitments of 1914, 1916, and 1994.
Amen. Yeah. Amen.
I feel I pretty much know how the vote will go this Thursday night, this week. I think the city is in a position where they will suddenly be defending themselves against injunctions and lawsuits, and once those are handled, there'll be appeals from either side. The years of the fight, I suspect. We could avoid all that by either, in my opinion, leaving things the way they are and honoring those agreements that have been in effect for so many years.
That's right. Yeah.
I personally don't see what the grounds of a lawsuit would be then. Or we could solicit bids on the building and put it in private hands.
No.
Either way, I believe those two options would allow this property and this decision to avoid a lawsuit filed against the city. I would hope that you would take any opportunity you have this week, and I noticed the handouts today, the programs have phone numbers listed for various members of City Council. I would hope you would take the opportunity this week, early this week, to share your opinions with City Council members listed in your program. It's truly an honor to have an opportunity to speak here. A great honor to see my dear friend Virgil Good. Tony Lundy, thank you very much. All the guests here, I appreciate it. Good evening.
Couple things that I want to bring to everybody's attention. If you didn't know it, the museum is open. You need to go in through the back. It's free today, so if you've never been in the museum, please take advantage and go through the museum and take a look at the artifacts that are there. Next speaker will be Mr. Fred Taylor. Fred, if you want to come this way. Fred is a lawyer with the Civil Liberties Union. He was at the courthouse Friday to try to protect our flag on our tags for the Sons of Confederate Veterans, to keep that license plate. and he's in the battle with us all the way. So with that, I see he has a special guest with him. So Fred.
We're trying to make this happen with my #1 fan up here. After all these great speeches, I think it's getting about time for all of us to roll up our sleeves. It's getting about time for some action. Thank you, sir. Today we stand in the shadow of a great history and on hallowed grounds here in the last capital of the Confederacy. Or should I say, still the capital of the Confederacy. At one time, such an event that we have today would not have mere hundreds of people, but thousands. We would certainly not need to be here to defend our honor and the honor of our ancestors. Today, however, times have changed. You all know the story. No longer is it the right thing to do or the politically correct thing to do to honor those who fought and died for the Confederacy. Rather, we are now under attack, full attack. And let me welcome you, because you need to realize it. Let me welcome you to a new form of Reconstruction. We can call it Reconstruction 2.0 if you want. Because the South and our history are in the crosshairs today, now more than ever. Weeks ago, assaults on our heritage and our culture, our American history, and our Christian culture, such attacks that could never have been dreamed of, have become reality. We know of the attacks faced by our friends down in South Carolina, where a coward legislature and governor pulled down a flag to honor its veterans. Not a flag over the dome that many in the news media like to talk about, but a flag on a monument not very different than this one that is on the grounds here. And now here in Virginia, we again face near insurmountable odds against a governor who wants to spit on the very flag that his predecessor governors ordered troops into battle under. All right. And we are under attack here locally from governments and city council members who wish to remove and tear down our flags and monuments. And from our very museums, so-called museums of Southern and Confederate history, that wish to rewrite the history and heritage that we hold so dear. While such heritage violations are certainly not new and should not be surprising to many of us who have held our heritage and history so dear, the new list of changes and effects on generations of people have taken its toll. So there's no wonder then why today there are not thousands here, but only hundreds. Because you and I have been made to feel ashamed of our Southern history. Ashamed of where we came from.
Never.
Of course, the South can be blamed for everything that is bad in American society, right?
That's wrong.
Because according to the history books, we were the only slave owners. According to the history books, we are the backward and illiterate. We are the ones that are behind the times when it comes to education because of how we talk and because of our love for agriculture. And most of all, we still revel in the past, which is why, according to many who are against us, is why nothing in the South is progressing today. So when you think about it like that, when you think about what our detractors say about us, the real question is, why would we want to even identify ourselves as Southerners? You wouldn't want to claim that, now would you? We would much rather mask that Southern accent when we were on vacation, or maybe hide that Confederate flag, regardless of which one, stars and bars, the bonnet blue, or in the most extreme, deny what our great-great-grandparents did altogether. denouncing our own families like a modern-day Peter. Unfortunately, the truth is, probably half of our fellow citizens here in the South fall into one of those categories. And it's sad because it's people we know. It's our neighbors, it's our friends, and even our own family members. And you know what? They are ashamed of their Southern roots and their Confederate ancestry because they feel guilty about the things that I've talked about already. All of these so-called evil traits that make up the South, supposedly. And all of the negative perception that we have been passed on to believe is supposed to be some type of reality. But what is the Southern identity? What does it mean to be from the South? Is it all of these things that I mentioned? Is it these things that our detractors say about us? Is it the things that the people who wish to see our culture destroyed say about us? I've put a lot of thought into this question over the years because it is not as easy as one might think on the face of it. The reason I believe that is because we as Southerners, we're here. We see the South every day. It is our very surroundings, so we are almost immune to it. Let's call it naive to being able to pick out some singular Southern characteristic. So in many ways, we take our Southernness for granted. Furthermore, when we talk about Southern culture, many people just think we're talking about some type of highbrow culture, a night at the opera, going to a fine arts museum, what might be considered upper class. But Southern culture and Southern heritage is a much broader scope that includes our Southern traditions and history. It includes our language and accents, our environment, and the very ideals and attitudes of our people. And so whether they like it or not, whether they want to admit it or not, the very people who shirk away from being proud to be from Virginia or North Carolina or from the South are already as much a part of Southern culture as you and I, because they take part in the same Southern experience that we do. But there's even more to it than that. The Southern identity is not just about being a part of the class of people who make up the South. The Southern people are a unique people. And let me tell you one thing, if you take nothing else from what I tell you today, we are a group of people who you should be very proud to descend from, because our ancestors, white, black, and red, got here the hard way. That's right. Of all the times when we look back on our nation's history, on American history, need I remind you that the South is over 400 years old. That is a very far cry from the very short period of time from 1861 to 1865 that our detractors like to point to when it comes to talking about the South. The South is in fact the oldest region in these United States of America. Some of our other speakers have touched on this, but I want to remind you. The South, oldest region, the Virginia General Assembly, established in 1619, the oldest legislative body. Dare I mention, lest I go against some modernist, revisionist, politically correct history book, that it was our ancestors who were here in the South 14 years before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock. And in fact, our brethren, our black brethren here in the South were there before the Yankees were as well. And that's not quite what we were all told in our history classes, now was it? Now to fast forward in Southern history a bit, how about our founding fathers? You've heard about them. One of the greatest speeches to ever be delivered by a man who just lived a few miles from where we stand today. You know it. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, you all know it, give me liberty or give me death. Spoken by the venerable Patrick Henry, the author of the Declaration of Independence, another great Southerner, Thomas Jefferson, and we've heard them all before, the names Peyton Randolph, George Washington, all men of Virginia, all men of the South. Our presidents, 10 of the first 16 up to Abraham Lincoln, all hail from the South. And let's shift gears from politics to the world of literature. The names: Edgar Allan Poe, Thomas Nelson Page, Sidney Lanier, Mark Twain, William Faulkner, Robert Penn Warren, all noted Southern authors. It's amazing, isn't it, for a group of people so put down, so ridiculed because of our past, deemed so stupid and ignorant and redneck because we lack in arts and letters. We sure do have a lot to be proud of, don't we? And the strange irony about it all is that these positive traits that we sometimes take for granted are not taken for granted by those outside of the South. Nearly every university in the United States offers classes on Southern history, Southern culture, and Southern studies, as do numerous schools across Europe, Australia, and even Japan. Outsiders, foreigners, love the South, and they love our Confederate history. It goes on from there. This Confederate battle flag, it is not just a symbol of the South, but an international symbol of freedom from oppression. In 1989, when the Berlin Wall came tumbling down, what flag was waving but the Confederate flag? Our beloved flag of St. Andrew. Similarly, when attempts at secession were made in Quebec about a decade ago, and last year in the great country of Scotland, where many of our ancestors hailed from, who did they look to as a model for that secession? The Confederate States of America. And even today, as bad as things may seem, a survey by CNN, gentlemen, ladies, determined that a majority of people across the United States viewed the Confederate battle flag as a symbol of heritage as opposed to a symbol of racism.
That's right.
There is a reason for that. As I said earlier, we are a very unique people. Even the Yankees love us. Think about it. How many of them come south to retire? When was the last time somebody told you, guess what? I'm getting ready to leave the plant, and my wife and I are moving up to sunny New Jersey, the Garden State. I don't think so. And need I remind all of us Virginians, I don't think we in Virginia would have had a governor for the past decade if the Yankees didn't love us so much to move here. We can't blame them, though. None of y'all have ever heard of good northern cooking. No. It's southern cooking that's so famous. Whether we're talking about fried chicken or sweet tea, barbecue, collard greens, Brunswick stew, you name it. And then you've got southern music, from bluegrass and country to the blues and early rock and roll, all found its origins right here in the South. The truth is, the South has a monopoly on history, on leadership, on fine culture, on manners, on eating well, and having a good time. But at the end of the day, we are still God-fearing Christians. We remember where we came from. We remember to say mama and daddy. We still open the doors for young ladies, and we say yes, sir, and no, ma'am. And because of that popularity, the South is not just a geographic condition. It is an attitude and a philosophy that transcends all boundaries, just as it transcends race and politics. So why should we remember where we came from? And how do we do it today against the tide of political correctness that is so rampant? In 1903, all right, buddy. In an address before the Southern Education Association, now you Tar Heels will like this, the governor of North Carolina had this to say: "No people can become a great people by exchanging their individuality, but only by developing and encouraging it. We must build upon our own tradition of character, temperament, and inherited traits. We must not repudiate, but develop. We must seek out and appreciate our own distinctive traits, our own traditions, our deep-rooted tendencies, and read our destiny in their interpretation." A good friend of mine and I had this discussion one day. And we were talking about the South. And we were talking about, how do you define the South? And he told me, "Fred, you cannot simply put it into a formula. The South begins right here, in our hearts. Because there's something there. There is something unique about knowing you're from the South." And he was right. Because until we can win back the hearts and the minds of the people, of our family and our friends, we will never recover what we've lost. We will never recover that Southern culture that I've talked to you about today. As the saying goes, it will be gone with the wind. So how do we do it? You've got the tools right here. It starts in our hearts, and it starts in each and every one of us who are gathered here today. Today's battle is not on the battlefield or in shouldering a musket, but rather takes place on the field of public opinion, in our courtrooms, in the minds of our people, and in our classrooms, and most importantly, in our homes, with young men like my son, and your own families. President Jefferson Davis said it best, right here at the last Capitol. "Our children may forget this war, but we cannot." It is time we send a message to our city councilmen and board of supervisors, a message to our legislators, and a message to all who are tasked to protect our rights and interests as elected officials. That message should be clear. They may furl our banners and our flags. They may take our license plates off of the streets. They may tear down and remove our monuments, and they may ridicule us and call our family traitors. But we have a weapon more powerful than their oppression, greater than their might means right attitude, and louder than any editorial from their newspapers. We have our refusal, your refusal, to accept the rewriting of history. We have our refusal to stand down in the wake of their bullying tactics. We have what is in our hearts and minds and in the hearts of many others, both black and white. The spirit that makes us proud of our families and what makes us proud to be Southerners. Because the South begins right here in our hearts. And if they silence one of us, we have the faith that others will stand up in our place. If they pull down one flag, if they pull down that flag, a dozen more will take its place. And if they silence me and you, many others will step up and demand that our history and heritage be respected. Let me tell you, I was about to forget something. This week, the local paper, the Danville Register and Bee, headlined that I had threatened the city of Danville with a lawsuit. And I would be remiss if I did not clear that up and tell you that it was not a threat. Oh no, it was not a threat, it was a promise. It was a promise promise that we will not stand idly by as our elected officials break the law. That's right. And it was a promise to our ancestors that we will not forget their memory. Because the truth cannot be silenced. The law cannot be ignored. Our history cannot be removed, no matter how many license plates the governor of Virginia takes off of those streets, and no matter how many monuments of ours are destroyed. Our freedom to gather and our freedom to speak out cannot, it will not, it shall not be silenced. And down to the last person here, we will stand up for our communities, and we will stand up for our families. We will stand up for Southern heritage. We will stand up for history and liberty, and we shall always remember that old times here will never be forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. Who is with me? Thank you. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Fred Taylor. I like that promise, don't you? Ladies and gentlemen, I have a sad announcement, and it almost slipped my mind. It should not have. I told you that the polls in South Carolina had the popularity of the Confederate flag at 75%. Well, several years ago, they had a referendum on whether the Confederate battle flag should stay in the state flag of Mississippi. 86% of the citizens of Mississippi voted for the flag they currently have, including 40% of all black Mississippians. Well, about 10 days ago, one of those black Mississippians that supported the flag attended a rally much like this one today, supporting Confederate symbols. He was a proud Mississippian, a proud supporter of the Confederate battle flag and the Mississippi state flag. Anyway, following the event, he was followed by some black militants. He was run off the road. The car flipped over 3 times, and he is dead. His name is Anthony Hervey. His funeral is today, and I'm pleased to have participated financially in paying for the funeral at Oxford, Mississippi, at the University of Mississippi. But I'd like to ask us all to take a moment of silence for Anthony Hervey, who was a brave man. Thank you so much.
I'm going to say something else about Mr. Hervey. He gave Fred Taylor this flag right here. And Fred Taylor has given it to the city of Danville to be in my care. But this is Fred's gift to the city right here. And it come from Anthony Hervey, the guy who was the black African-American who was just murdered in Mississippi for flying the flag. I want to address a few more things on the sale, the potential sale of the museum. On July 2nd, we offered $500,000 for the building. And Fred, I know you've been a good friend. If you can find 5 more votes, I can give you this check today. There's a check for the museum right here. We can end this problem now. Now, I don't know who the geniuses were 30 years ago that set this deal up. But the city derives quite a bit of income from this museum. The taxpayers really benefit. The museum pays 25 cents a year. Now, if somebody wants to get your calculator out, this check covers about 2 million years of rent. I want to talk about 100 years ago, the Confederate Memorial Association. We are bringing back the Confederate Memorial Association. It's being reinstituted. It's going to be a 501c3, and we will be raising funds. But 100 years ago, they raised $18,000 toward the $48,000 purchase price of this museum. The UDC, and it's in a lot of ledgers, magazines, newspapers, There's all kinds of evidence that the UDC also raised $20,000 toward this museum. Both of these organizations had a statement of purpose of honoring the Confederacy, honoring the Confederate valor of the soldiers, the purpose of collecting mementos and being a Confederate museum. The first thing they did was put a sign right here that said Confederate Museum in 1913. And the first thing the Museum of Fine Arts did was take it down. Well, I want you to know, we are the rightful heirs of the Confederate Memorial Association. We are the rightful heirs of the ladies here with the UDC. And today, translated to today's dollars, we've already given the city $927,000. Now, we want the city to take this money and give us a credit for the $927,000. And if they can't do that, give us our damn money back. We want our building back. And we won't stop till we get it.
Hooray for the Black Confederates.
Oh, well, it's half a million. That's right. This check is for $500,000. And I would love to be able to give it to Fred today. And I know Fred would be able to like to take it to the city and let them cash it. But we need a few more votes. And I'm going to tell you, today is my birthday. Tomorrow is Frank Harvey's birthday. And I think I can speak for both of us. I'm going to take a little liberty with your birthday, Frank. But I was born 55 years ago, about a half a mile that way, at the Memorial Hospital. I was born a Danvillian. My people were born here, and it goes back for generations. And I want one thing for my birthday this year. I want all of y'all to get me a birthday present. And what I want y'all to do is I want every one of y'all to come and bring 10 more people with you. And I want you to come speak to City Council Thursday night. I want all of y'all to meet me at 6 o'clock in front of the council building. And let's all go in there and let them know to leave that monument alone and sell us this building. And what I want to say to finish off here for myself, I want to thank the UDC because they couldn't have raised all the money 100 years ago if it hadn't have been for the ladies. And I know if we don't have the ladies helping us today, we won't be able to do it now. And I also want to thank Susan with the flaggers for coming here and supporting us. And I want you to know, I don't care what, we back you up, girl. We're proud of you. Everybody, let's meet City Council Thursday, 6 o'clock. I'm going to give it to Frank Harvey. Thank y'all. We're going to close out today's event with the Virginia 18th for the Confederacy. And for today's event, I want to thank everybody for coming out today. I want to thank all the veterans that are here today, and I hope that you enjoyed today. And if you didn't hear, General Lee has arrived. General Lee car is around back. It belongs to a gentleman named Steve Rutter. Met him a couple of weeks ago, and he was gracious enough to bring General Lee home today. So after the volley, that'll be the closing of the event. Remember, the museum's open. Please take the opportunity to go in, make a donation, buy something in the gift shop. And as Tony said, let's all come back Thursday and let the City Council know exactly how we feel about taking down that monument. And if that monument wouldn't be there if it wasn't for Wayne Byrd and the Heritage Preservation Association back in 1994, making sure that they dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's to protect that war memorial. Thank you very much. Frank
Fire by company. Ready. High elevation. Hey! Fire!
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, if you'll uncover, Reverend Tom Fowler started us off with a prayer, and he's going to end us up with a prayer.
Let us pray. Father, we have so much to be grateful for. Grateful for this land, this house, these flags. We're grateful, Father, for our people. Grateful for our country. Forgive us and bless us. Bless the South, we ask. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.